Let's imagine that you got shipwrecked on a remote island and it was just you and this other lady. And she speaks Chinese and you speak Russian, okay? And neither one of you know the other language, but you know enough of how Chinese sounds that you know she's speaking Chinese, you just not sure what she's saying. She knows enough about how Russian sounds that she knows you're speaking Russian, but she doesn't understand what you're saying. What would you do in that situation? Probably would be using some version of rudimentary sign language. You would be pointing to things and you would be using your particular language as you're pointing to things or whatever. So there would be a huge visual component. And also, as both parties are kind of pointing and demonstrating physically with their arms and whatnot, they're speaking their language. And so the other person kind of gets some idea of what a particular word is based on what you're pointing to or whatever. For example, let's say that you can see over in the distance that there's a thunderstorm coming, really super dark clouds and lightning, and you look to this lady that speaks Chinese and you point, and you're talking and demonstrating, see, thunder, lightning, you and me probably need to find cover over there. And so you're speaking Russian as you're using sign language, so to speak, and she kind of gets it. So the whole point to this is, I'm going to make up a term, logic. I'm going to call it logic-ease. She operates mostly through the emotional lens. We're going to call it emotion-ease. You're stuck with somebody who speaks almost only emotion-ease, and you're a person who speaks almost only logic-ease. And so the two of you are not speaking the same language, and she doesn't get you. She expects you to get her, doesn't she? You're supposed to know what I want. You're supposed to know how to behave. You're supposed to know what I'm feeling and why. You're supposed to be able to read my mind and my emotions. I know I'm being sarcastic, but not much. She doesn't get you either. She doesn't get your logic. She doesn't get your why you think the way you do, why you feel the way you do, why you behave the way you do, why you have certain opinions. The moral to the story is this. That's why a long way around the bush to get to this point. One of the things that you can do if you're so inclined, and you have compassion, you have empathy, don't let anybody tell you otherwise, you can think in terms of, okay, I'm with a lady that speaks emotionese, and she has very little clue about me and how I operate. And so instead of getting upset with her like she has done with me, how many times? Lost count. I'm going to muster up a little grace and mercy, compassion, patience in that moment and realize she just doesn't speak my language. And I'm going to work really hard at not getting angry with her for not speaking my language. She's stuck in the language of emotionese. She's stuck there. She can't crawl out of her skin and crawl into your skin and look out of your eyeballs and use your brain. She doesn't have much of a clue about you, and she will never have much of a clue about you. And that's not necessarily her fault, because you don't understand her either a lot of the time. Some things you do, of course. But there has been times where you think, God, she's so overly emotional and irrational, and why would she feel that way, and why would she want us to do that? So it's confusion, two-way street. It's a two-way street. And so the point is, again, in those moments where you're so frustrated with her, and especially when you're downloading her words and behavior as she's belittling you and being critical of you, try, guys, in those moments to be thinking, okay, here we go. Just like the Chinese and Russian people on the island, she's speaking emotionese, I'm speaking Russian. We're not going to have a meeting of the minds much here. We're very rarely on the same page. And so instead of me getting aggravated that she's not speaking my language, I'm just going to have some grace and mercy in that moment and realize she's speaking emotionese. She doesn't get me. I'm not going to allow myself to get bent out of shape given the dynamics here. When next time you're frustrated with your wife, look at her as a foreigner and who doesn't get you. And I think if you will do that, she won't push your buttons as bad. We want to think in terms of grace and mercy That's the big message here. She's downloading things a particular way. You're not causing her download. You're not responsible for how she's downloading things. She's choosing her download, and then she is feeling based on the download a particular way, and she's saying and behaving particular ways based on how she feels. So I'm going to have a little grace and mercy and realize I don't have any control over that. It's a shame that she is so miserable. I'm going to take the high road here and realize, I would hate to be her, where I'm always suffering so much in this way. So instead of me getting defensive or trying to explain myself or trying to go head to head with her or feeling criticized, instead I'm going to choose grace and mercy. This is for your benefit, grace and mercy. Grace and mercy, that's your new mantra, grace and mercy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend a little mercy in this situation when she gets done talking, which is I'm going to avoid getting defensive and getting angry back and explaining and then ridiculing her. So that's what she's doing to me right now. I'm listening to it as I see her, and I'm not going to do the same thing to her. That's mercy in the moment. Mercy in the moment. You're going to realize I don't need to be taking this behavior as personally like she's been doing. She has taken my autistic traits personally. She's so locked into the emotional brain that it's hard for her to muster up logic. Not that she doesn't have any logic, but she basically, when she's upset, she doesn't have any logic. And so she has her own mind blindness too. That's how she's wired. And I'm not going to take it personally anymore. She can't help her wiring any more than I can help my wiring. So I'm not going to participate in this game of who should change their wiring first. It's not going to happen. She's not going to change mine. I can't change her. I give up. I'm no longer going to try to explain or correct her or get her to understand my perspective. I have no control over it. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. She cannot wrap her brain around the belief systems that you have, the way that you think, the way that you feel, or the fact that you lack displayed emotion, the way that you behave, your logic. She doesn't get it. That's the NT version of mind blindness. You're doing things that she is downloading as inappropriate, and that's what's causing the pain.